Hello, my friends, and welcome to BariAftercare, the podcast. And I am beyond excited today because I have somebody that has never been on this podcast who should be broadcast everywhere. I'm going to introduce you to Lora Grabow in a minute, but Lora is a spectacular, phenomenal bariatric therapist. And as you know, there are not enough of us in this industry. Many
No.
people figure it out afterwards that the head work is the hard work, and that's what Laura and I do. And we didn't get to meet until last year, so in person.
I know. Too
I know,
long.
I know. And we're busy, busy ladies, and so we just catch up here and there. But welcome, Laura, to the podcast, and thank you.
Connie, thank you for having me. And it's such an honor to be here on your show. And I absolutely agree, there's not enough of us. And I love that we can be here together and talk about the importance of what we do.
Yeah.
Because even after all the years, you and I have worked in bariatrics, I feel like it's still the missing piece. Like, how can that be? It shouldn't be missing anymore. Like,
It shouldn't be. It should be, honest to God, it should be embedded in every program, a psychological pre and post operative care program.
especially post.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know what's interesting though? When I do you don't do evaluations, right? Pre-surgical eval.
I did for many years, but I
Oh,
don't do them
really?
anymore. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So when I do those, I require people to watch this series of videos that I created because I felt unethical, honestly, just doing a 60-minute session with somebody. I'm like, this is fine. I need to get their information, and knowing a lot of people are just going to tell me what we want to hear, right?
Right,
Not
right.
everybody, but there's a percentage. But I thought
Absolutely.
there's so much I want to educate people about. And I'm telling you, I get so much good feedback about those pre-surgical evaluations, but I have
I'm
never thought about this. I never considered it would be, this would be involved, blah, blah, blah. But you're right. That aftercare work is so, so critical. So how long I mean, I don't really know your background in bariatrics. So how long have you been serving this community?
since 2003, so 21 years this year. Isn't that
Okay.
crazy?
So
I'm not
yes,
old enough. I'm not old enough.
well, I am old enough, and
I am
I
too,
have
obviously.
I have been in this field for about that long too. So how did you get started?
Yeah, so I am trained, so I'm an MSW, so licensed clinical social worker, and my dream job, if you will, was to always work adolescent psych, especially with adolescent girls. And I did that trauma work right out of graduate school, loved it.
Wow.
And then I had my own girls. I had my own daughter, and I knew I couldn't keep doing the trauma work, right? I knew I also wanted to cut my hours. I always wanted to work, but while they were little, I wanted to be home a little bit more, do
Sure.
more work in the evenings, didn't want to be full time. And I had a friend call who knew me and said, "Hey, we're looking for someone. I'm coming to you from Grand Rapids, Michigan, to do groups with medical and surgical weight loss patients." And I said, "That sounds great, but I know nothing about medical and surgical weight loss patients."
Yeah,
And he said, "I know, Laura, but you know how to do groups." Because, of course, a lot of my clinical work with
of
adolescents was
course.
groups. I mean, I did individual, but we did a lot of groups too. So I'm like, okay. And it was in the evening. It was perfect, right? And then I just fell in love with the population because I'm like, wow, I'm with
Yeah.
adults who want to be here and want to talk, right? So different than locked residential care where I was treating,
Absolutely. Oh God.
adolescent girls. And so I just kind of fell in love with it, and I've realized I was very spoiled. I thought everyone in Grand Rapids, Michigan, like every surgical center was like the one here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which was called Grand Health Partners. We had 5 bariatric surgeons. There were 4 of me. We were
Wow.
called behaviorists. There were 4 of
Nice.
us on staff. There were 3 exercise physiologists, 3
What?
dietitians. Yes, 3 obesity medicine docs, all under
Oh
one
my
roof,
God.
right? So it
That
was
is
this.
amazing.
Right. I thought everybody had that. They don't. And it's a private practice model, which I was always like, why are you guys like not presenting at ASMBS? Because this is like the
Yes.
model to have. Um,
Yes.
so we did do a lot of aftercare. That's where I did the pre-op psych evals, but we did a lot of
Oh my
aftercare.
goodness.
I provided therapy right on site. And then, and then COVID happened. So as my girls got older, I just kept expanding my hours. and
Okay.
working more. And then COVID happened, and I think that, shook everything up. And here I am working at home. Thursdays I work at home. And I thought, I'm doing this on my own anyways. Like, why don't I just do it on my own? And so it wasn't like there was any conflict or anything with the docs. My office
Right.
is still right down the
Right.
road. They still refer to me. And so, and I do a little bit of everything now. I have an individual therapy practice where I'm doing like individual work, about 12 to 15 clients a week. What I was really passionate about was reaching more people outside of Grand Rapids, Michigan. So things like
Right.
this. And so when I was on my own, I was able to um, do podcasts like this and do support groups for other bariatric
Right.
membership sites. And I created and launched a course because I learned we have, back to that ethical piece, there are so many patients who are not getting the head work. And so that's a little bit of
Absolutely.
my story. That's where I
I love
am.
that. So for until the pandemic, you worked for the same practice.
I did. Yeah, I
That's
did.
cool. That's
Hmm.
pretty impressive. Okay, so it's funny because, yeah, I started working at home after the pandemic also, and that's when I became familiar with all the online stuff that was
Yes.
going on in the bariatric community. It was like, where did this all come from?
Yeah, I didn't even really know what Instagram was.
Yeah, so
I
that's
mean,
when
I
you
kind
were.
of knew it. I'm like, do I have to be on it? And then
I
when
know.
I created and launched a course, because you share my same love of teaching, you talk about your video series, and
Yes.
I'm like, okay, how do I get this head work outside of Grand Rapids, Michigan? I had no idea I was creating and launching an online business. I had a wonderful team that helped me with that, but that's what I was really I'm like, well, I just want to teach. I just want to record this course and get it to patients.
Yes. Yes.
But you then really need to be online and interacting and having community. And now I love it. Now I learn it. But again, it was another unexpected piece of my professional journey,
Exactly, and talk about a learning curve. I'm like, "What?"
right?
And I still suck at it. So, fortunately, I have somebody who does the majority of it for me because
Right.
I don't have the time for that learning curve, and I'm too old. I didn't grow up with it.
Yeah. Well, one thing I appreciate about you, Connie, and I think we share is we probably decided early on that we never wanted to be influencers. We wanted to continue to be experts and provide patients tools.
Yes,
And
that's
that's a
right.
big difference. And I
Yeah.
really believe the people who follow us experience that and sense that.
Yeah, I wanna shout out to the surgeons at that practice because so amazing that they had value. They saw the value in the work that you did and your cohorts, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I know from working around the country, that's rare. Not very many
It was
places.
very rare. And like I
Yes.
said, I was in my bubble. I was there 18 years. I just assumed. And when I started doing some public speaking, like at obesity help conferences, and I was just teaching basic emotional eating
No.
skills or cognitive behavioral therapy strategies, it was like I was giving them air, water. And I'm like, how can you not know
Yes.
this? And then I
Exactly.
realized so many of our patients get the pre-op psych eval, and that's it.
Yeah, and it's really sad because I worked in Augusta, Georgia for 15 years at the same practice. Because it was well, there were a couple others in town as time went by, but the guy who owned the practice, it was an independently run practice also, saw 0 value in the work I did, and he would come right out and tell me.
Oh my
He's like
goodness.
he's like, "The only reason you're here is because of the requirement." And it just not only did it infuriate me, but it saddened me because I'm like, "I'm one of the few people in the country doing this." You
Right.
know?
Right.
You are looking a gift horse in the mouth.
Right.
And so when we moved to Atlanta, which was about 6 years ago, I traveled back and forth for the
Wow.
first couple of years, and when the pandemic hit, I said, "I'm not going there anymore," and I had started working with some Atlanta-based programs, and such a difference in the mentality of the surgeons. They were
Hmm.
like, "Yes, we want aftercare. We want this information." So I feel sad for patients who are at practices where mental health piece, the mind stuff is not valued.
Right. Because it really is, as our patients tell us, they'll always say 90% of it's up here. And they're right.
That's right. I always liken it to I was reading a book a while back, and it was talking about professional athletes, and how the professional athletes will say that 80% of their game is in the head, 20% of it's physical, but they spent 80% of their time working on the physical mechanics of their sport and only 20% of the time. And I think it's very similar for bariatric patients.
I know. I know. Well, that's why we're glad they have like podcasts like this and they can come listen and find that there are resources out there to help them. It's just sad
That's
they're
right.
not getting it from their surgical centers.
So let's talk about your class. What's it called?
So my video course is called Foundations and Headwork for Healthy Weight Loss.
I love
And
that, foundations and
yeah,
head work. And
foundations and headwork.
what kind of topics do you cover? And it's all
It's
self-propelled
all
online.
self-propelled.
Nice,
It's yeah,
nice,
it's six, well, it's seven videos, but the seventh is more of a wrap up. So the content is really
right.
six videos. And I really literally invite people into my living room because I had a
Awesome.
videographer come and film me in my living room.
Perfect.
And I talk about the first two. It was really hard for me to pick what are the foundational skills, but this is what I came
Right.
up with because there's so much I wanted to teach. The first two are really focused on teaching some basic CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy strategies. I've been honored to do some trainings with CBT with Dr. Beck out at her Weight Management Institute.
Oh, that's awesome.
So teach, really introducing, I call it squashing your stinking thinking, right? Being able that the thought comes first and the
Yes.
CBT of catch it, check it, change it. So those first two videos focus on that. And then there's homework and there's handouts and little
Nice.
quizzes. The next two focuses on emotional eating. So no surprise there.
Right.
Exiting your emotional eating roller coaster. And then I did one that I call Can Your Yes Be Sabotaging Your Weight Loss? And that's all about our patients really struggle with setting healthy boundaries, right? They're
Right.
everything to everyone. And
Yes.
so we take some time to focus on how that's sabotaging them and what to do about it and balance. And then a
Nice.
favorite one is I think they're all my favorite. It's hard, but
I know.
building and using your support team. So the foundational headwork of you can't do this alone, and you need other people. But the key is who's on and who's off the team. So teaching patients like what roles need to be on there. You fill them, but you also decide who's off. So how do we take unhealthy people off our team,
Right.
and also use them, right? So you've probably learned this too. Our patients can say they have a great support team, but they're not accessing them. And I'm like,
Right.
it only works if you use them. So those are the foundational skills that we
Those
focus
are
on.
so critical, especially that well, all of them. I'm with you. It's like all of them. But
Right.
so many people are emotional eaters. And when I do my pre-surgical evaluations, I say, it sounds like in part you're looking for the surgery to do things that surgery doesn't do.
No.
Surgery doesn't give you the skills for dealing with your emotions and not turning to food. So you're going to have to, you're going to have to do some work on learning those healthy coping skills.
Right. Right. And in fact, oftentimes surgery helps them realize how lacking they are with being able to feel their feelings in healthy ways. Like they'll say, I didn't even know I struggled with this until I couldn't eat anymore.
Exactly. And that's why for a lot of, people sometimes judge how did you allow that person to have surgery, right? Why did you allow that person to have surgery? Why did you clear them? Well, it's almost impossible for people to fully understand until sometimes, like you said, sometimes they don't recognize these emotions or don't even realize that food was an emotional tool for them. So we can't expect people to know everything going into the surgery,
Hmm.
but we can let them know there are things you're going to have to learn as you go because surgery doesn't fix this piece.
No, no. And yeah, and back to you probably do this because you still do so many more of those pre-assessments, but we would have like a almost like a red, yellow, green light model in terms of
I like
in
that.
most patients like okay they're green they can go on like no interventions need to happen. And yellow light was more yeah, there's some binge eating disorder here that needs to be taken care
Mhm,
of, or emotional
mhm.
eating, or lack of coping. And that was, we're going to approve your surgery, but you need to be in counseling along with. Like, let's do the
Yeah.
interventions concurrently. And
Yes.
then red was more like, this, like active suicidality, active substance
Right.
use disorder. Um, that was like, oh, we're going to put you on hold to make sure we get some things stabilized first.
Right.
And because we know they also need their surgery, they're sick, right?
That's
That
right.
surgery is going to bring health. And I had to
Right.
have a good reason to say to the doc, can we just hold on? And
Yeah.
I, like you, have learned our patients are more open to our intervention post surgery because they're
Yes.
so inundated and they're so like, this is going to be it. And this is the answer. And it's going to be
Yes.
wonderful. And we can tell them you're going to struggle with emotional eating, but they don't hear it
Right.
until they struggle. And then they're
Right.
more open to you and I coming alongside and helping.
Yeah. And it's interesting too because I used to joke that if patients could walk in the front door, for their initial consultation and walk out the back door into the operating room, they would, right?
Yeah.
And I have compassion for that. It's like, my God, they've struggled with this for so long, and their health is so impaired by this weight. Yes, they need to
Hmm.
have the surgery, but they also need to understand.
Right.
So I do a lot of that. Listen, I want you to have the surgery, and I know you need the surgery. I'm concerned because of this or this or this. So I would like you to enter some therapy with the therapist of your choosing,
Hmm.
because my fear is da 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 da. And I'll get a lot of pushback from some of them, but
Hmm.
but what I know is, and I'm like, I don't want to stop your process or not so you've still got this many months of preparation anyway, so just get into the therapy, and as long as you've started, because I know once they start, they're going to be so.
Oh, yay. I'm glad I don't have,
That's
I
my
thought my
dog.
dog would bark first.
Well, I hope yours joins. Tyler, what are
Yeah.
you doing?
He's taking a nap right now. So we'll see. I'm like, oh no.
So yeah, it's like once they get started, like when you get somebody working with you, they love it and they're so grateful.
So grateful. And, I would often say, I said, just because, like I said, we had the obesity medicine docs on our team right there too,
So
who would
nice.
clear them medically. I said, just like you're seeing them and they may refer you to cardiology, that you need to have these cardiac tests, or they're going to refer you for a sleep test. I said, my job is to give you the psychological tools, if you will, the psychological test. It's not that
Right.
you're failing the psych eval, it's that we need to
Right.
put everything in place to make sure you have success on this surgery.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, most people, if they're initially taken aback, most of them are so grateful afterwards,
Exactly.
because they realize we're not trying to stop them from getting the surgery. You and I both know the benefit of this surgery
Right.
and are huge advocates for it, or we wouldn't be in this
E-
field for 20 some years.
right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you do with your individual patients, is it all bariatric?
Mostly, I would say most of my patients are bariatric or medical weight, I've
Right.
met, in a the medical weight loss program that I used to work at. But as you know, it's not like our therapy is just focusing on weight loss. When they come in,
Absolutely.
often the unhealthy relationship with food is a symptom of trauma,
Right.
um, depression, anxiety. So the whole gamut.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people ahead of time are like, "Well, that happened so long ago, it's not gonna interfere." And so how would you explain to somebody how prior trauma could interfere with their postoperative success in terms of maintaining weight loss?
Yeah. Just like getting me right there on the spot with a hard question.
You can
But
defer, you can
I'm
deflect.
ready. I'm ready. And then you just tell me, because I really respect your work too, of what if you agree or not. So what I have seen, well, first of all, we know that people who have the disease of obesity also have um, a strong score with their adverse childhood events scale, right?
Which is one of my favorite things ever.
Yeah, which they didn't even call it that when I was in grad school, right? But
Yeah.
now they have like ACEs, and it was actually
Mhm.
discovered, if you will, like someone who was treating obesity was like, wait a minute, I'm seeing a lot of
Yeah.
trauma. So we know that our patients who have obesity, a good amount of them are going to have some childhood trauma.
Right.
How I see it affect, um, I think the most succinct way to say it is to cope with their trauma. All they had was their relationship with food
Hmm.
or their size to keep them safe.
Right.
Um, it may have been an unhealthy coping skill, but it was still a coping skill.
Right.
And my work with them on the journey, of course, is you're going to have rapid weight loss with bariatric surgery, no matter what, in that first
Right.
year, just by changing your anatomy.
Yep.
Um, and so you don't have your physical size to make you feel safe anymore. So it's working on that piece. But the other piece is I will work with my patients in terms of, food was there for you for a long time and you needed it for
Hmm.
protection, but now you don't anymore. Now it's not helping you, it's harming
Right.
you. And so um, being able to work through that piece and in a way say goodbye to it and what else can I put in its place.
Yes.
Um, and many of my patients I refer to EMDR therapy. I'm trained in EMDR. I did a lot of that
Yes.
work with my teenage girls, but now that I'm in obesity medicine
Yes.
and I don't do it as much, I don't feel ethical doing it because I'm not doing it all the time. So I have other
Right.
people that I refer to because I think that's a big help to help them
I
with their
agree.
trauma. And I think, part of trauma is taking care of everyone else but yourself and you
Yep.
know,
Yeah.
it's
And
hard.
I think all of that, all of those things, I agree 100% with everything you just said. And, some of that taking care of other people, and it's part of who they are, but it's also a way to meet the needs of being wanted, being needed, being accepted, having a friend, having.
Right.
And then there's the piece that comes along with any childhood trauma of having that sense of what's wrong with me? I'm not
Right.
good enough. And really internalizing that message. And just like the food served them at one point in time, it does not serve them well at this point in their life. They were criticized and rejected and teased and bullied. Now they're doing it to themselves.
Right.
And so getting rid of that stinking thinking, I think, is such an important tool, because I just think that if people continue to think, I'm the problem, something's wrong with me, it's going to be
Right.
hard for them to treat themselves with kindness and love and respect.
Absolutely. And a big part of our work, Connie, is helping our patients break free from shame
I know.
and then to show up to themselves with self-compassion. And they come to us
Yes.
with so much shame. I remember saying to one of the docs I worked with one day, again, this is when I was doing psych evals and trying to educate them on, obesity being a chronic medical metabolic disease, and you're going to need all these pieces of your treatment plan to treat it. And I remember saying to the doc, I'm like, we're kind of shame lifters, aren't we? And he's like, yeah, we are. Right.
Big
Like our
time.
patients deserve to be well. Um,
Yes.
but they've internalized and they've heard from society with all the weight stigma
Right.
and weight bias, right? This is your fault. Just eat
Yeah.
less, exercise more. And I'm like, you know what? If it was really that easy, like we would not have an obesity epidemic.
Right. Exactly. And I really think, and this goes back to what we were talking about, how we work with this afterwards, because I really think that that shame that comes from that external trauma, whether it be bullying or being ostracized or coming from some people in your family. I think that just limits people's willingness, not willingness consciously, but it affects their belief that they can and deserve the
Right.
healthy lifestyle and all the good things that every human being deserves.
You got it.
It's interesting. I remember working with this woman one time, and she was we were talking about, if you had 100 people lined up in a row by weight, who in that lineup would have the most value? And
Mm.
she cognitively would say, well, they all have the same value, all worth, all humans have the same worth. But when it came to saying, where would you fit in that lineup? And how's your value compared to those other people? It did not equate because she
Mm.
was overweight. She was adamant that she had less value. And I think that's really an important thing for our patients to understand is that no, you have equal amounts of value, but you have to internalize that message.
Hmm. And that's the hard work. And
That is hard
surgery,
work.
the surgery on the stomach does nothing. I remember
Yeah.
um, one of the surgeons, we were doing something together with our patients when I worked at the surgical center, and he said to the patients, my job is the easy part. I can change your anatomy in
Love
15
that.
minutes. He goes, the hard work is what you're going to do in her office. And he pointed
That
to
is
me.
amazing.
And that's the truth, right?
It
Like
is.
learning your value, learning to break free from shame, learning to show up to yourself with self compassion. Like that can't be done in an operating room.
Absolutely. And when you have the surgeon saying that to the patient, I think that gives the patient so much permission,
Right.
because they think the surgeons are on the pedestal. And
Isn't
so
that the truth?
when a surgeon gives them that message, you want to be in that room.
Yeah.
That's such and if we could I think so many surgeons and I understand they're not trained in what we do,
No.
and a lot of them have no clue. They don't
Right.
understand the link between any of it, and they don't have to. But if they would respect and refer their patients to it and say, "I expect you to follow through with
Right.
the mental health people," what a gift that would be to the patients.
Well, and it's a gift to them because they want, surgeons are rightfully so, they always want to improve their outcomes. And we know
Absolutely.
patients who engage in mental health treatment post bariatric surgery do better.
Absolutely.
So it improves their
Absolutely.
outcomes.
Yeah, it's kinda hand in hand there, friends. Don't you wish, like, when we go to these big conferences that we could speak to the surgeons,
Yes.
instead of being set apart with the allied health people? Because 'cause we're
Right.
all
Like it's
speaking the
here's
same
surgeons and
language.
here's, yeah, surgeons and integrated health. And you're like, wait a minute.
I did this conference it was in Europe somewhere. I think it was Italy, and it was great because it was a small chapter of IFSO, and so the surgeons everybody was in the same room. And I was up there talking, and I'm telling you, and they had a surgery video going on both sides of me on the screen. And so the surgeons are paying absolutely no attention. And I called them out. I
Good
said,
for you.
listen, I said, listen, I am standing up in front of you, and I would appreciate your attention because what I have to say is critical information for those of you who are surgeons. So, man, I was
Well
like,
done.
hey, 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 hey. Yeah,
Well
but
done.
I wish we could get in front of the
Maybe that's our
surgeons.
next thing, our next 2024 goal.
I love that. Yeah.
Because you're right, there are so few of us still.
Yes. Yeah. So you work more with individuals. I don't do very much individual work anymore.
Mhm.
Um, so if people want to see you, because again, there are so few great bariatric therapists out there. How do they find you or
Yes.
take your
So
class?
I know. So I right now I'm not accepting any new individual patients, which is
Right.
hard, right? Like I
I
wish there
know.
were like 5 of me and I could.
Right.
But I try to practice those boundaries that I teach. But I can
Absolutely.
always welcome people into the online community, my online course community, and they
Good.
can purchase my course at loragrabow.com. And I would be
It's
happy to do a 30% discount code
cool.
till the end of the month. Or what is,
Cool.
we're not the end of January. I'll do it for 1 month
Okay.
for your listeners. It can
Cool.
just, what do we want to call it? We'll call it Connie 30. What think of a
Yeah,
name?
we could put Connie 30. Yeah.
Connie 30. Connie
Yeah.
30 is going
And
to
I'll
be
put
your
that in the show
discount code.
notes. Yeah.
Connie 30, and they can join my course for 30% off. Um, I know you have Bari Aftercare. I Do lead some support groups in another BariAftercare program, if you will,
Right,
called
right.
Bari
You can,
Nation.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So patients can find me there in the Bari Nation community. And obviously, at a minimum, please join my email list. Head over to
Yeah,
loragrabow.com. Stay up on what I'm doing. I just launched my first ever book club, which I think I would call it a book study,
I
where
heard about
it's
that.
going
How
really
is it?
well. It's going really well. So they'll hear about, different offerings like that. And then, of course, follow me in my online community on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, so I want to spell your name. It's Lora, Laura.
Yes, a little bit different.
And
So,
Grabow is Grabow, but that also
yeah.
will be in the show notes. But
Yeah,
so did you say there's an online community associated with your class?
there is. There is.
Okay,
Yeah.
so tell us
Yeah.
about that.
So we do, I got a full honesty though. I offer it, you probably feel this, but nobody comes.
Oh,
It's a private
yeah,
Facebook group, and it was something that was really important to me. But again, I wanted the course participants, the
sure.
students, if you will, to engage in it. And I've had a hard time like having it really launch. So
Yeah.
it's
Well,
there,
you
but
know, we got to offer it, and people are going to take advantage of what they want. I think a lot of people who
exactly.
do online classes benefit from the homework that they're doing, the
Yeah.
work that you give them to do to apply that information to themselves, and maybe they're with it, maybe they have their own therapist and they take because I do an
That's what
online
I'm learning.
class. Yeah, I
Yep.
do an online class, but it's live online.
Right.
And and I encourage people, "Hey, take this week's homework, take it to your therapist."
Same. See, we do
And
so much of the same, Connie.
yeah, and I'm so glad because honestly, before the pandemic, you were out there doing your thing. There were a lot of other people doing what we did, but we didn't know about each other.
I know. I know. So we need
Yeah,
to know about each other.
we do because this is funny. And my approach, I come from the alcohol and drug
Yeah.
recovery world, and it's pretty like, I'm not going
Yeah.
to hammer you, but I'm going to say, listen, I get where that's coming from you, but what up?
Right.
Whereas your approach is much more, you're much softer than I am. And I am not the therapist for everybody. And yet some people need that. Hey, I'm going to call you on the carpet here.
Right.
So I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing with a very different style
And that's
than
what our
I am.
patient, yeah. And that's what our patients need, right? I always tell them, I said, I believe in what I do. So I've been in and out of therapy. And when I, meet with
Absolutely.
somebody and there's been therapists I haven't connected with, I'm like, nope, you're not for me. And that's
Yeah.
okay. And you have to find your style. And I totally support the work you do. I have two patients in my practice and I have through the years. It's not all of our patients who have to be abstinent from sugar and white flour and are very involved
Right.
in the 12-step community.
Very cool.
And, again, it's the patients have to build their team and put on their
Right.
team who they need the most. And
Exactly.
I will say, though, I think I'm soft and nurturing, but I will have patients say I can cut through their crap pretty quickly.
Good. Well, yes. And you
So,
do so
or maybe
softly and nurturing, I
maybe
think.
all good therapists, that's what we need to know how to do to say, well, I think the real
Yeah.
issue might be.
Yes, for sure. Because I'm thinking you're paying me. I'm not just going to pat you on the back. I'll do plenty of patting you on the back and giving you a hug on the way out, but there
Yeah.
might be a little swift kick in the rear while you're there.
Well, it's hard for me when patients tell me they've been with other therapists where they never got any feedback.
I know.
Nothing.
I can't, what is that? Carl
What is
Rogers, I
that?
guess, but
I guess, but you need more of that. Like they need to be able to work on something and
yes,
they're coming to us for direction as
absolutely.
experts.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of therapy myself, which is how I got into the field. But
Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. I went through a lot of therapy before I went back to school to
Good
become a
for you.
therapist. Yeah, yeah. In
Hmm.
fact, I just called a therapist today because I'm like, you know what? I need a little tweak in this area. And they called me back, so I'm going to catch up with them afterwards. But yeah, we got to practice what we preach.
Absolutely. I think it's an incredible form of self care and exactly what you said, being able to identify, like, you know what, I need a tweak, I need a tune up. And that's how I look at things in my life too. And then we go back and we work through it because we're always
Yeah.
growing.
Exactly, exactly, and if nobody challenges us along the way, I think our growth is somewhat stunted. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the the ACEs study, and a lot of people don't know what that is. And can you tell them a little bit about that?
I'm going to put that back on you because
Okay.
I'm blanking on the doctor's name. He was
I
treating
don't know the name
obesity.
either.
Oh, okay.
I
Well, he
don't know
was
the
treating
doctor's name.
yeah, he was treating obesity. I just thought it was interesting that it started in obesity,
Yes.
and he kept seeing these themes of trauma, 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 physical and sexual abuse, and he's like, we have to study this. And then there was somebody, and then this happened. Maybe it was when you were in grad school. I was in grad school in the 90s. We didn't even have the ACEs scale. And now there's a scale,
Right.
adverse childhood
Right.
event scale, that you can score. And our patients have many. I mean, it also can be death of a parent,
Right.
just different
Divorce.
traumas. It's not divorce, right? And what we know, and you know this as a psychologist too, is when these events happen in our formative years, they have more of an effect.
Absolutely. Here's a funny little story. Because I was not familiar with the ACEs project at
Okay.
all. And so maybe, I don't know, 8, 10 years ago, I mean, I wasn't aware of it at all. So I came up with the tool that I use with my patients. It's called the 4 ACEs.
Look at
So,
you.
but it had nothing to do with the adverse childhood event. So, so I was talking to a woman who's a nurse practitioner in the field, and we were having a good chat. And I said something about the 4 ACEs. She goes, "Yeah, that ACEs study was powerful." And I'm like, "What is she talking about?" I had no idea what she was talking about, right? But I'm kind of playing along
Just,
like,
yeah, that's what we
I know
do.
what she's talking about. So then, when realized what this thing was, and I went back and looked at it, I'm like, this thing is phenomenal. And then I found an article written by those doctors, the weight loss surgeons.
Hmm.
And if anybody wants to look up this article, it's called Obesity Problem, comma, Solution, or Both. No, no, no.
Wow.
Yes.
No, yeah.
Problem, solution, or both.
Hmm.
And the doctors, I use this article um, sometimes when I speak at conferences. So I also have a good friend who lives in New Zealand whose husband is a bariatric surgeon, and she is kind of like runs all their programming. And so I was fortunate enough during the pandemic to get to speak at their version of the ASMBS conference
Hmm.
online. So I didn't have to travel anywhere. It was great. But I used that article written by these physicians who were doing this weight loss program who figured out that, my gosh, we thought we knew how to treat obesity. We thought it was just the medical thing and going very low calorie and da 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 da. But what we found out is that the people who were really successful in losing the weight dropped out of the program because these emotional issues, they didn't have the protection from the weight or the comfort from the food anymore. And they were like,
Yep.
what is going on with this? So it is an amazing article. And I swear, if every bariatric surgeon would read that article, they would
Hmm.
have a much better understanding and probably receive it better because it's written by a handful of physicians.
Yes. And actually, several years ago, this was probably one of my favorite keynote speakers at ASMBS. First, I was completely surprised, but pleasantly surprised that their keynote was a public health doctor. So this was
Nice.
pre-COVID. It was LA. I'm
Yeah,
like, huh, they're bringing in public health, because usually it's going to be cardiology or oncology, which I
sure.
get, endocrinology, but like public health. I'm like, this is great. And he said, and this is all of us, right? Like you said, so he's talking to allied health and surgeons, and he
Right.
said, if you really want to treat the obesity epidemic, we need to work on preventing adverse childhood events. And I wanted to
Woo-hoo-hoo.
stand on my chair and like,
I
yes, he gets it, he
know.
gets it, he gets it. And then, of course,
Yes.
if not preventing, I mean, that would be our ultimate goal, helping people in the moment, right?
Yes.
Get healing and work through the
Yeah.
trauma. I'm
And
like, did they
and
just say that at an ASMBS conference? I love it.
I wonder how many, oh my God, I love that so much. And so I've always worked with adults because I don't think I could take the heartache of kids. I did work with teens for a short time, but I don't think I could take the heartache, and I would probably land up in jail because I would do something bad to those parents. But
I
anyway,
know.
But I figure, you know what, if I can work with adults and help them work through their stuff, and as a result, they will have better communications with their spouses, they will be better parents, and then the children can have a better opportunity
Yeah.
to have fewer childhood events. And when we work with adults in the obesity community, they have that same potential to make it different for their children and teach them,
Yes.
and so I think we are helping future generations by helping the adult population, and that's really where my passion is at. It's like, let's get better families and better humans. I
I
mean,
agree
mentally,
110%.
emotionally.
Isn't it so
Yeah.
rewarding when we see our adult patients change the story?
Oh my gosh,
Right?
it
Like you're writing
is.
a different story for their family than what they
Oh,
had. So it's that ripple
yes.
effect. And we get to be
It
part of
is.
that. And it's beautiful.
And yeah, and that's why people say, "Oh, the surgeon saved my life," or "You saved my life," and I'm like, "No, I didn't, and neither did the surgeon." We're here to provide you with things. You can take it or leave it. You're
Right.
doing the work. Is that surgeon
Bingo.
home with you every day, changing your menu? No, they're
Right.
not. And neither am I.
Yeah.
So you get all the credit, and I get the absolute joy watching it happen.
Hmm. I knew there'd be a lot of us going, as we come together because we share the same passions.
Yes, absolutely. And I love now finding people like you in the community and knowing that there are so many of us working with the same passion, with the same energy, and with the same goals.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Do you
Yeah.
do any group stuff?
Yes. So all of my groups right now are done with Berry Nation. So,
Oh,
and I,
okay, that makes
yeah,
sense.
yep.
Yeah.
And I also, you mentioned live virtual classes. I have done those on my own through my online
Uh-huh.
business, if you will, my virtual business.
Right.
Haven't done one in a while, but I did an 8 week intensive CBT, the model
Yeah.
that
Yes.
I was trained on at the Beck Weight Management Institute, and I have an 8 week emotional eating one that I do live. So might start doing those in 2024. Right now, the book I'd really recommend it. It's called Hungry for More by Dr. Adrienne Udeem, and it's been
Yes.
excellent.
I'll put that in the notes too because our mutual
Our
friend
mutual
Laura
friend.
Preston has been telling me about that book, and it sounds really amazing. I'm looking for. Have you ever read? Ooh, oh God, I can't remember the name of it, but it's something about, I don't know, being out in the open sky or under the moon, or I don't know. It is a phenomenal weight loss book.
I'll have to
But
read it. I have not.
so CBT, when Laura talks about CBT, is cognitive behavioral therapy. I don't know if we said
Yes,
that out
sorry,
loud.
I don't think I did.
Yeah, and it's changing your thinking to help you change your behaviors.
Yep. Yeah.
And are you talking about Martha Beck?
Talking about Judy Beck.
Judy Beck. Judith Beck. That's
Yes.
what I meant.
Yeah. And then her
Judith Beck.
daughter, they all became, right? So Aaron Beck, her dad, invented
Right.
cognitive behavioral therapy. And then Judith Beck is doing it as well. And now her daughter is doing it, Debbie Beck Bice,
Love
who's
it.
a, and yeah,
And Judith Beck has one of the best books I've ever read on weight loss. Um,
the pink one,
oh, I'm going to look it up real quick. When I read that book, I thought, damn, why didn't I write that?
because it's a program. I know my favorite book of hers, I'm not a big fan of the title, and I don't think she is either. Like, authors can never, it's, pick their title, but it's the Beck Diet Solution.
That's the one.
Train your
That's the
brain to
one.
think like a thin person. And
That's
it
the
is
book I like.
the CBT program.
That book, I was like, well, this is it. This is it.
I was so thrilled when it came out because when I went into obesity medicine, like, when I worked in adolescent psych, there was tons of trainings I could go to. There was like
Right.
nothing on obesity. So when her
Yes.
book came out and it was her and it was psych, I'm like, I'm going.
Oh my gosh. Yes, that book is unbelievable. So I
I
would
think,
recommend it to everybody, the Beck Diet Solution.
yeah. Yeah, she
Ignore
has
the
three out
subtitle.
and yep, she has three out, but that was her first one and I really think it's her best. And we should let you know it's not something you like read by the pool. It's a program you are doing, and
Right.
it's something that someone could do with their therapist
For sure.
because a
For
workbook
sure.
comes with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's an
So that's one
amazing,
of my 8-week classes I do. Maybe I'll have to
very
get that on the
cool.
schedule in 2024.
Yeah, there's so much to do, right? So
So
much to
much to
do.
do.
Yeah, but it's all good. It's all good work. So I am super excited that you were on today. And I mean
I
that
know.
from my heart because we need people to know more about you and the work that you're doing.
Well, I was honored when you sent out the invite, so thank you very, very much. I've
You're
loved it.
welcome.
And
I
keep
hope
doing your
that I,
great work with Bariatricare.
thanks. I love it. I love Bariatric. Yeah. Okay. So I hope I get to meet up with you again in person this year.
We need to make it happen.
Yes. They're not doing JBY, are they, this year, next year?
Yeah, I
But
don't know. So
yeah.
we'll figure it
Okay.
out.
Well, I will see you when I see you. And in the meantime, I will keep following you and supporting your work and keep referring people to you.
Thank you. And I will
You're
do the
so
same.
welcome. You take care. And it was so good to touch base.
Yes, let's do it again soon.
Okay. Bye
Bye,
bye.
Connie.